Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Touchline Talk with Odds Changer and SBK. As usual, I'm joined by the one and only football writer and broadcaster and general man in the know, Dean Jones, to discuss all the latest news and gossip from the world of football. It's been a busy few days, Dean. Finally, Manchester United have sacked Ole Gunnar Solskjær and the search is well and truly underway to find a replacement. Obviously, United put out a statement saying they were maybe looking for an interim manager until the end of the season, but it seems might be looking more likely that Mauricio Pochettino could be coming in to take over from Solskjær mid-season, which is probably a bit of a surprise to a lot of people. Just looking at the odds, Pochettino 6-5 favourite with SBK. Got Michael Carrick, who's in as caretaker manager at the minute. He will take charge of the game against Villarreal in the Champions League. He's 34-5. Brendan Rodgers, who's been touted a lot for the job, he is 37-5. While Ajax manager Erik ten Hag, who's I think got some admirers within the Man United boardroom, he is an 11-1 shot. But all signs seem to be pointing to Mauricio Pochettino. Are you expecting this move to happen now, Dean?
It seems far more likely than I imagined it would be at this stage, and I think more likely than Man United thought it would be at this stage. I mean, the fact they put out a statement saying that Carrick was in temporary charge while they looked for an interim manager showed that they didn't think that any of the guys they viewed as legitimate long-term candidates would become available at this moment in time. I think briefings that have gone out since that statement have changed their viewpoint and made them more optimistic about the fact they might actually be able to get the guy that they've wanted all along right now if they're willing to cough up the compensation. At this point, just pay the compensation. If this is what you wanted all along, if this was what you see as the plan, then £10 million in the scheme of things is really a drop in the ocean, isn't it? I mean, when you've spent as much money and wasted as much as they have in the post-Fergie era, this is nothing. Just do it. I think that it would suit PSG at this point as well. They're not particularly happy. I don't think that Pochettino is being so heavily touted with this job, and clearly it seems that soundings have come from his camp to get the stories written that have been in the last 24 hours. The journalists that are writing it as well, they're clearly the guys that are close to Pochettino. It all makes too much sense right now. And I don't think PSG particularly pleased about that. What they will be pleased about is that they could get Zinedine Zidane instead. And I think Zidane to PSG is a better fit than Zidane to United, which has obviously been mooted as well. So, yeah, Poch ends up at United, Zidane ends up at PSG. I think that everybody really ends up quite happy.
Yeah, it could be a good domino effect for all parties involved. As you said, Zidane, who wasn't overly keen on coming to the Premier League, and Manchester United gets his dream ticket to return to France and manage PSG, while Pochettino, who's always felt he had unfinished business in the Premier League from his time at Tottenham, gets to come back and manage Manchester United, which has been a dream for him, I think, for a long time. This move just accelerated. It seems, like you said, a lot of the sources coming about Pochettino being very keen on this move. I think that's what's accelerated this one. As you said, Man United thought they might have to wait until the summer to get Pochettino, but it seems the path is now clear, maybe to do this now mid-season and get him in straight away to try and transform United's fortunes.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't happen very often this way around that a media narrative quickly drives a club's ambition. And clearly it's gone one way and then reversed the other. Everybody knew that United wanted Pochettino. So then obviously media sources have gone to check out the other side of things. Could he be got right now? And they've clearly been given the message that, yeah, actually he could. And then once you start to read the detail of those reports and why he's not been happy at PSG, it's definitely given United reason to believe that, okay, he's gettable and we can skip this interim stage that we've mentioned in the first place if this guy is willing to come. Now, obviously, it's a tricky week for him. He's got a Champions League match against Manchester City, so got to deal with all that at the same time. The message really that I'd heard before these latest briefings was that PSG wouldn't be particularly keen to swap managers until their Champions League fate was sorted out. So it seemed like Pochettino would probably see through the Champions League campaign before any change come. That might not be the case anymore. It might just be like maybe the winter break, maybe that pause between the Champions League group stages and the Champions League knockouts is the time when these changes can actually come about. There's so many people that involved in this decision making at Man United these days. You know, whether it's the Glazers, Ed Woodward, Richard Arnold, John Murtagh, Darren Fletcher, Matt Judge, Alex Ferguson. There's so many people with an opinion, with a voice, and in big roles that it's difficult to understand where it's being driven by. But the interesting thing about the Pochettino side of things is it was Ferguson that wanted Pochettino all along, right? And we know that Ferguson's voice still matters to this club. And it makes sense that it does, because actually out of all those names I mentioned, he's the one with the experience and with the nous to actually know what it takes to get Man United to be successful. And so if he's still saying to them, go and get him, go and get Pochettino, these guys have got to listen, because everything they've tried so far has been a nightmare. I know that him suggesting Moyes as his replacement didn't work out too well. But this time around, look, he's got Ronaldo back. If he's telling you go and get Pochettino. And then hopefully for United, it will finally be that things start to fall into place.
Yeah, obviously, Sir Alex Ferguson is a huge admirer of Pochettino. I think it was a couple of years ago that he was pictured having a secret meeting with him, I think, in London, which obviously fueled all the rumours that Pochettino would end up at Old Trafford. United probably feel and wish they probably made that move 2 years ago rather than what's happened the last couple of seasons with Ole Gunnar Solskjær. Just looking at the candidates who have been linked with the role, for you, Pochettino, the best man for the job to try and get United back on track?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think there's a guarantee of success anywhere at this point. The guys that you've already tried in the past, you thought Mourinho was a guarantee of success and he got a couple of trophies, but he didn't bring ultimately the Champions League, Premier League, things that they're going to ultimately be judged by across their history. So it's tough to say. I don't think we can be sure that Pochettino is going to do great. It's very plausible that he might struggle to deal with the size of the club, with the number of personalities in the dressing room. But again, you're going to imagine he's going to be promised time to stabilise things, to address certain issues, get through this season, then go again next season. Will they need another rebuild? Who knows? But I don't think they've got time for another rebuild. I think they just have to quickly build on the platform that's already been set out by Solskjaer over the past couple of years. And yeah, he definitely has the credentials to go and do that. And obviously the ability and connections to make this squad stronger when we get to next summer's transfer window.
Yeah, he will have a project, I'm sure, in mind, Mauricio Pochettino, if he does take over. But probably the first aim for him is to get United back in those Champions League places. I think in the Premier League, for a club like Man United, they need to be playing in the Champions League on a regular basis. So that'll probably be his first aim once he goes in there, and maybe get the best out of those players, which obviously Ole Gunnar Solskjær couldn't do, because United, there was a lot of optimism at the start of the season after those signings of Ronaldo, Varane and Sancho, but just obviously didn't come to fruition for Solskjær. So if Pochettino can go in there and have a quick fix, maybe things might end well for United this season.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, I think it'll be interesting to see what happens behind the scenes at United as well. It's interesting right now, obviously, like Michael Carrick and Kieran McKenna and Mike Phelan, these guys are all still there. And I mean, they're surely part of the problem at Man United up to now anyway. And the messages in the dressing room are going to be very similar, as Michael Carrick admits, to when Solskjaer was there. I would imagine Pochettino comes, he brings his own people, and those guys probably won't be hanging around anymore. And I think that that's going to be necessary. I know I read that some of the players were surprised that it was just Solskjaer that left and everybody else was left behind. But I don't think that's going to be the plan long term. And ultimately, yeah, Pochettino needs to make some changes to the atmosphere and the vibes around the place if they're going to lift everyone to the levels they should be. I mean, there's not many times you see a team like Man United where every single player is completely out of form. Like, apart from David De Gea, I can't really think of anyone that's in form right now. Maybe Van der Beek, because he's finally got to run out and got a goal. So Van der Beek's in form by what he's been allowed to show. But it's unbelievable, really. So it's quite a nice situation to go into, I guess, if you're Pochettino, because at PSG, all you can do is fail, really. I mean, anything but winning the Champions League and Liga is failure. Whereas at Man United, from this point, he's taking over. If that's what happens, it's the only way is up.
Yeah, you would think the only way is up for Manchester United. They're pretty low right now, probably lower than a snake's body, the way they're feeling after that defeat to Watford at the weekend. Talking obviously of a new manager coming in, that could be a clean slate for a lot of players at Old Trafford. But still, we're expecting a few players to probably leave when the January transfer window reopens. Dean, lots of talk about Jesse Lingard now, seemingly set to leave United. He's failed to agree a new contract. Those contract talks have collapsed now. So Lingard, who's in the final 6 months of his contract, could either sign a pre-contract with a club from abroad or maybe go and join a club in January, with Man United taking a big hit on him when they probably could have sold him for 30+ million last season following that successful loan spell at West Ham. So we're expecting Lingard maybe to move, the likes of Phil Jones, Dean Henderson, and then obviously you mentioned Van der Beek. Will he maybe stick around now if Pochettino comes in and maybe gives him a run in the team?
Yeah,
What
look,
are you
I think
expecting at Old Trafford in January?
Lingard has to give it one more crack. This is his final opportunity now to stay at Man United for his whole career. He loves Man United. That's why he's back there right now. That's why he's given it this chance again this season. He signed their contract last year because he believed he could prove himself there. And I still think he wants to do that. I don't think he wants to go and join West Ham, whatever. He'll do it if he has to, because he's not going to let his career completely stall. But this is a fantastic opportunity for him to have a last crack for the next 2 months at showing he can get into this team. So I think that'll be interesting to see if he can play his way in. Donny van der Beek, ultimately, we'll look at this as a fantastic opportunity too. I think having Michael Carrick as his boss for the next couple of games will be really helpful. You would imagine Carrick and the way that he's been brought up and the fact he was a midfielder will see qualities and strengths in Van der Beek that he will want to utilise now and look to get his personality within this team. Be amazed if he doesn't do that. Look at Solskjær. His personality was reflected in the Man United team. Like, they've gone for the past 3 years getting by on late winners. Like, literally what Solskjær did throughout his career as a player, scored last-minute goals. And that's what the team ended up doing. So maybe now Carrick, slightly more sensible, slightly more technical. Maybe we'll start to see over the next couple of games him getting a slightly different style and slightly different tune out of some of these players that haven't been getting the opportunity. Jadon Sancho too. I was surprised to see him get the start at Watford. I didn't think the timing of that was right, considering all the chances there have been to start him. I would have done it at home at Old Trafford way before now. I think to play him at Watford, the club he grew up at, on the back of an international break, the guy can't play himself into form over 90 minutes, felt a bit sorry for him. So it's a big opportunity for him too, because I know that he'd been having a couple of doubts about where this was all heading. But then on the flip of that, there are other guys that I think their time's up. Dean Henderson, I think, will still look to move. Phil Jones is still allowed to go and find a new club. Whatever he sees fit, really, at this stage, Man United will go with. And Dalot, maybe. I'd say that one's a bit 50-50.
Yeah, Dallow's been in and around the team in the last few weeks with a few concerns over Luke Shaw and everything else. Talk of Roma maybe being interested in Dalot with Jose Mourinho, a big fan of his fellow Portuguese. Dean Henderson's the interesting one. Dean really, obviously, he had a decent season last year when he got in ahead of David De Gea, but now De Gea is back as number one at Old Trafford. And I know he had a few mistakes in that Watford game, De Gea, but obviously he's been probably United's best player so far this season. So it's not looking too promising for Henderson to get into that team anytime soon. Where do you think he might end up? There's been talk of Newcastle, even Tottenham, maybe as a long-term successor to Hugo Lloris.
Yeah, I honestly think his door is open now to offers, and they're kind of inviting anybody to come and speak to them. Agents have been told to go ahead with those talks, and Man United accepted a couple of weeks ago that Dean Henderson needs to be allowed to go out initially on loan. I wouldn't rule out the chance of him leaving permanently, to be honest with you, at this point. That David De Gea is back in form. As I say, they're the only player really in this squad who's actually in form right now. We'll probably see David De Gea get a new contract. And if David De Gea signs a new contract, then there's no point Dean Henderson hanging around, is there? So as frustrating as it will be for him to give up on this, he'll want to play football again. And whether that's a project like Newcastle, where you could be part of something big, or you want to go something a bit more established, and a Tottenham, because it seems like Hugo Lloris is going to be on his way out there. Yeah, if I was him, I'd probably go for the more established route. Like, don't take any chances at this point. But it depends what his ambition is.
Yeah, he's obviously got ambitions of getting back into that England squad as well, which he's lost his place over the last few months in Gareth Southgate's plans as well. Yeah, as we mentioned, Henderson's been linked with Newcastle. We're expecting Newcastle to be one of the busier clubs in the January transfer window, Dean, following their Saudi-led takeover. But who are they actually going to be able to sign, do you think? I know central defence is a key area that Eddie Howe is looking to improve. James Tarkowski of Burnley's been strongly linked. He's in the final 6 months of his contract at Turf Moor. He might be gettable. Also talk of Nathan Ake from Manchester City on loan, who has obviously played under Eddie Howe before, and also Phil Jones, as we've talked about before as well. He could come into the reckoning for defensive reinforcements for Newcastle. What are you hearing? What might happen on Tyneside during the window?
Yeah, I have had that Nathan Ake one, to be honest with you. It was one that Eddie Howe is going to push for. Obviously, he's not making all the decisions in terms of recruitment at this point at Newcastle, and they're going to have a team of people that decide these things. But Ake is somebody he feels could fit in and might become available. I think he is looking at a couple of other former players he worked with as well at Bournemouth. They've got to be really careful about how they recruit here because, you know, they're obviously being linked with people like Dele Alli, Aaron Ramsey, but halfway through a season, signing players that are out of condition, possibly out of form, definitely. Is that a great idea when you're in a relegation battle? Possibly not. I mean, they might have the motivation to do well, but there's not that guarantee that they're going to be able to do it. We saw Jesse Lingard obviously go and prove himself at West Ham when he had the opportunity. You need to find someone with that desire and hunger if you can, and that's what they've got to be really careful about finding. Tarkowski, obviously Burnley won't want that move to go through because that's going to hinder them as well going forward, and they'll be trying to talk him out of it. So it's going to actually be really difficult, as well as the fact we've mentioned before that a lot of these clubs don't want to do business with Newcastle. They don't want to help them right now. And why would they? Why would you want to help someone become an elite club, which is ultimately what Newcastle want to do? You want them to get relegated. So don't give them any players. So it might even be that Newcastle do have to turn their attention to the foreign market. And I think they will probably, you know, look at the kind of connections that they've got through the takeover and the figures involved now. I think that they are casting this net pretty wide and their eyes are pretty open.
Yeah, they're casting that net pretty wide, but again, on the other side, it's difficult to attract players when you're in a relegation fight, despite the finances on offer. From what I'm hearing, Newcastle will be only looking at loan signings in the window. I'm not expecting any big money signings, which obviously they've been linked with a lot of big names since the takeover, the likes of Coutinho, Rabiot, all sorts of players have been linked with that. That's not going to happen in this window. They're going to have to do this stage by stage and try and make the right signings in January just to ensure they stay in the Premier League. So from what I'm hearing, loan signings is going to be the way of it, despite all Newcastle fans' optimism that some big names might arrive.
I mean, it makes sense, doesn't it? Because they're looking for short-term fixes. And so signing players on loan with something to prove is probably the way to go. I mean, it's the way a lot of clubs go. I've spoken to sporting directors before who have been involved in relegation battles, and they refuse to get drawn into signing players on long-term contracts at that point because you've got to protect the business as well. And I know that Newcastle have got loads of money coming in now, but you've still got to be careful about what you're handing out here. Don't be signing someone to save you in the next 6 months, but then you get relegated and then they want to leave and you're stuck. You end up sending them out on loan just to please them. You can get caught up in a real dangerous cycle once you start doing that. So it often happens. Loans will, is plausible way to get out of this. So yeah, I can believe that will happen.
Yeah, one player you did mention who might be a loan target for Newcastle is Dele Alli. He's facing another uncertain future ahead of this January window coming up, Dean. It was last January that he was very close to a move to PSG before that deal fell through. His career's really stagnated under several different managers at Tottenham. So far, Antonio Conte has not used him in his starting 11 in his first 2 Premier League games. He got a couple of minutes off the bench against Leeds last weekend. What's going to happen with Dele Alli here? He's obviously, I'm sure he will be the subject of interest maybe from other clubs in January. Do you think he needs to leave Tottenham now?
I mean, he doesn't want to, and I think that he's got to show the desire that Conte absolutely demands in order to make this work. He's not gonna give him chances he doesn't deserve. So Dele has to prove to him in training that he deserves run-outs. He also isn't going to play Dele yet because he hasn't played enough games to show he's got the capability to get through the intensity of a 90 minutes. And he hasn't got the form to do that at the moment. So he's got to be kind of gradual with him anyway in the way that he uses him to try and get him into form. That's the difficulty that he's got with some of these fringe players that he's taken over now. Like, if they're not in the team, then they're not in form and they're not fully fit like some of the others are. So he's got to find a way of getting that right, whether it's extra training sessions, which I know he is doing. Because Dele has to give this a crack at working. Like he's got all the potential to be in that team every single week. He's been one of the best players in the squad. We know that. We've seen it. We've seen him on his best days. Him and Kane made this side tick. Can Conte get that out of him again? Well, between now and January is massive because if it doesn't happen then we know Tottenham will start looking to the transfer market and looking to replace him. And if that happens, you do wonder where Dele Alli's going to end up. I mean, look, maybe ends up with Man United with Pochettino again. Who knows? But I wouldn't, rule that out. To be honest with you, like that's the kind of connection you look for. You start to look, well, where's he worked before? And Pochettino obviously got a tune out of him. So we'll have to wait and see between now and Jan. But Dele needs to knuckle down and kind of have a last crack at this.
Yeah, it's going to be a big few weeks on the next couple of months for Dele Alli, who's obviously just seen his name linked with moves away from Tottenham over the last few transfer windows because he just can't seem to get a regular run in that.
Mainly to PSG with Pochettino.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, exactly. That one's off the table now.
Yeah.
Everything else. But maybe a move abroad for Dele Alli, because I know he has shown an interest in that before, so you wouldn't rule that out. Maybe I know Monaco have liked him in the past with Paul Mitchell, who knows him from his time at MK Dons and at Tottenham as well, could maybe be in the reckoning for him. But as you said, if he doesn't buy into Antonio Conte's long-term plans at Tottenham, he will have no issues with getting rid of him.
No, exactly that. Yeah, and you'd like to believe that Dele's got that desire. Obviously, a World Cup next year. He should really be an integral part of this England team as well. And to be on the fringes at Tottenham and completely out the picture with England, it must be hurting him. And I know that, from the outside, fans will be judging him, say all he cares about is his social media or his appearance. And, people are starting to talk about him similarly to how they talk about Pogba and think that he doesn't care. I don't believe that can be the case. I don't believe that a guy this talented naturally and who's played football all his life suddenly doesn't care because he started buying designer clothes. I don't believe that that's how it works. I just think he's got the capability to do that, so he's exploring it. But we've got to see that it comes through now, and Dele needs to prove everybody wrong and get back in there.
Yeah, he's got the chance to try and save his Tottenham career under Antonio Conte, but if he doesn't do it quickly, I think a move could be on the cards for the England midfielder. We thought that Conte got his first win as Spurs manager at the weekend. Steven Gerrard got off to a winning start at Aston Villa last weekend with a win against Brighton, but he's likely to enter the transfer market to strengthen his squad at Villa Park in January, Dean. Lots of talk saying that he might go back to his old club Rangers for some of the stars from the Ibrox side. He knows them, he trusts them, he will want to bring players in that he trusts and knows will improve his options at Villa Park. Some names that I've heard, like Bora Barisic, the Croatian left back, I think he could be a top target. I think Matt Targett's the only real recognised left back at Villa right now since Neil Taylor left, so that's probably an option for Gerrard as well. Also, Glenn Kamara, the midfielder, the Finnish international, obviously showed his best form under Gerrard at Rangers as well, so I think he would come into his reckoning as well. Do you expect Gerrard to return to his old club maybe and look at some players?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I heard Nathan Patterson as well, young right back. He's interested in him, and Ryan Kent's somebody that's always talked about leaving Rangers. Obviously, like there's for the past year or so, Rangers have been bracing themselves for bids for people like Glenn Kamara. So it's going to happen. Like these guys are eventually going to move on. It's just, Gerrard's not going to go and sign 5 players from Rangers in the next transfer window. It doesn't happen like that. So he'll probably only end up signing 1. He's just going to have to figure out who best fits to improve this Aston Villa team, because obviously anywhere you work, there's personalities and players that you like and you think really helped your team improve. But he's now got to assess this Villa side, where it's fallen short, and who he knows could come straight in and make an impact. So it'll be interesting. And I'd imagine that, guys like Patterson, who are young and can kind of be moulded and still have the real burning desire to make it, especially at a club like Villa, if they got the chance. I do wonder if he might turn to somebody like that.
Yeah, someone you could maybe develop and then sell on for a big profit in the future if he fulfills his potential as well. And probably Rangers are expecting this, and they're looking at their last financial results, they weren't great, so they may need to sell one of their best players in January to balance the books, etc. So we know that Villa have got money, got very ambitious owners, so if it comes down to that, Villa will stump up the money, I think, for one of these players. So definitely one to keep an eye on here to see if Gerrard returns to Ibrox to raid his old club for some players. Right, that's us here for another week on Touchline Talk. We'll be back next week for all the latest news and insight from the latest goings on in football.